What makes a great product owner? Part 1. I did mention in my previous video that we'd get into managing scope, backlogs and general product ownership in upcoming videos, so here goes. Some people like to think a product owner is a project manager rebadged, but they're not. Project managers track and report. A PO is accountable for delivery. I'm going to use a very good definition from scrum.org to describe this role. A Scrum product owner is accountable for maximizing the value of the product resulting from the work of the Scrum team. How this is done may vary widely across organizations, Scrum teams, and individuals. The product owner is also accountable for effective product backlog management, which includes these 4 things: developing and explicitly communicating the product goal, creating and clearly communicating product backlog items, ordering product backlog items, and finally ensuring that the product backlog is transparent, visible, and understood. The product owner may do the above work or may delegate the responsibility to others. Regardless, the product owner remains accountable. This actually gets more explicit, which is why I really like the Scrum definition, as it explores how vital this role is and how it goes way beyond a project manager's skill set. For product owners to succeed, the entire organization must respect their decisions. These decisions are visible in the content and ordering of the product backlog and through the inspectable increment at the sprint review. The product owner is one person, not a committee. The product owner may represent the needs of many stakeholders in these product backlog. Those wanting to change the product backlog can do so by trying to convince the product owner. The business versus tech delivery teams argument. One of the old adages that I get from Agile fence sitters is that their business is not inclined or hasn't the time for product ownership. That's something you can work around by having your business sponsor appoint a product manager to oversee the vision at a fairly high level and to collaborate with the product owner who sits in the IT organization. Ultimately, what you need are product owners who understand the domain. For example, a product owner who worked for me in a previous firm was in the IT organization, but his experience was as a former currency trader. That meant he knew what he was talking about to other markets people, but it also made the leap to communicating it well in the backlog as to what the outcomes were. If your business sponsors don't want to spend the time working closely on the backlog and the goals, then you have a problem that sits in a whole different paradigm when the organization is not taking Agile seriously. In that case, you risk being compromised when there isn't commitment and interest in what the money is being spent on. You're likely only ever to be in a position that is somewhere between stressful and untenable. You don't have to be a technologist to be a successful product owner for a product team that delivers working software either, as it's not your job to decide how the feature should be built. That responsibility, including architecture, rests with the team. This is why I have little time for architects. Most of the time they're divorced from the detail and the domain and offer not a lot more than application catalogs and technology standards to be endlessly debated in pointless meetings, a bit like this poor guy's calendar. So far we've touched upon the 4 things that a PO is accountable for. Let's look at the first 2 of these in detail. Firstly, developing and explicitly communicating the product goal. This is very obvious, but is part of the discipline of what needs to get done. Without a clear goal, nothing useful can get delivered that meets expectations. Certain features that make up the product as a whole that are core for viability can sometimes be assumed by people. This is why explicit facts need to be stated in agreement with stakeholders. The product can be a large undertaking, but it will always be a set of increments on a roadmap and can be scaled up accordingly with teams as appropriate. The key here is that from an investment risk perspective, you really only stand to lose the last sprint or two that make up an increment if the work delivers something that happens to veer off track. Secondly, creating and clearly communicating product backlog items. Clearly defined and communicated items in the backlog allow the delivery team to select which user stories from the top of the product backlog they can commit to during any sprint. Notice that this entails a lot of upfront work by the PO to have this list in the backlog item in a state that the ones at the top of the list can be worked on straight away. This means not only the PO's input but also the team validating the content and estimating the work, which may necessitate it being broken into smaller stories. I cannot emphasize enough how collaborative the PO role is, and they cannot operate in a vacuum. When we talk about self-organizing teams, this is it in action. What a world apart this is from the traditional project manager trying to gently cajole people into delivering what they think makes sense for the next period, and not always asking whether that's achievable in a sprint. This all flows a bit in this manner. Here we see a backlog that is covering a couple of sprints. To keep it simple, I've got 7 stories here and the first 2 sprints, so that's 4 weeks duration. When the PO is keeping everything in good shape, the demo at the end of the 2 sprint increment will show that the well communicated backlog and product goal up to this point has been met. Hopefully, happy people and good to release to production and on to the next increment. Obviously that is a happy path, as there may be some adjustments to do and then to verify before releasing. Worst case, the whole lot is not quite right, so the next increment seeks to address that. But that is not a huge amount of time in a product lifecycle if the course is corrected. Thus, the wasted money of a lost increment is in the thousands and not the millions, lowering the risk for investors. Now, before you go, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Your feedback is valuable, so please feel free to comment. Thank you.